Okay. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie and this is binge inking. So today I am going to go through my October wrap up. I read 6 books this month and it was, I would say, a better reading month than September. Just overall, I feel like it was a little bit more hits than misses. And I think I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, where I go from lowest rating to highest rating. Here we go. The book I'm going to talk about is one that has been hyped up like crazy all over social media, like YouTube, Book Talk, Bookstagram. It has been everywhere even before it actually came out. Also, sorry if you hear a cat eating, it's Goosey. Anyway, and this book has been hyped up like crazy, and I have read other books by this author and mostly liked them. And I was shocked at what I ended up rating this book, which is 2.25 stars, and it is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book has such an interesting premise. It starts in France in the 1700s, and we meet Addie. She lives in like provincial France with her family, and she, I think, is like 23 or like 25. She doesn't really want to live a life where she's born and dies in the same village and marries and has children, and then that's kind of it for her life. And she is close friends with kind of the village, like kind of a witch. She like does witchy things. She's not like Christian. But this woman is like, oh, I pray to like the gods of like nature, basically. And she will put like offerings in like the dirt or like in the river, like whatever it is. And so Addie's like, please, 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 I do not want to get married. And so she's praying to like the forest, the river, the earth, like all the things she can think of. And she has been warned to never pray to anything once the sun has set, because anything that answers after dark is going to basically be evil or not give you what you hope for. And so it's the night of her wedding. She's about to get like walked into the town square to get married at the church, and she just freaks out. She can't do it. She runs back and ends up running into the woods, and she's just so upset. And then she's just like, please, 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 I want to live like more life than this, and accidentally prays after the sun has set. And so basically the devil answers. She says she wants to live like a long life, a full life, and he grants that wish. Now what this turns into is she is basically immortal until she decides that she wants to be done with the way her life is from this like curse or blessing. But the catch is that no one remembers her. So if she were to walk into this room right now, I'd be like, oh, hi, who are you? And then she could tell me her whole life story. We could be hanging out, but the second she walks out of my eyesight, I would immediately forget who she is and that she even like existed. And you kind of follow her through time, and then it's, I think, 2015 in New York City, and she meets someone who can remember her. She continuously over these 300 years has opportunities to say like, okay, I'm done, like I don't want to do this anymore. And she is very miserable at points, but she always is like, no, there's still more that I can see and more that I can do. My issues with the book are that it's a very Eurocentric white novel. The main character lives through 300 years of history from 1700s to the 2010s, where so much happens in the world. She never once goes anywhere except the United States and Europe. During the civil rights movement was in the US. That part is just glossed over as she's in a relationship with someone and it was on and off. Like there's nothing addressed about anything except just her constantly thinking about herself and wanting to leave a mark of herself on the world. And that's literally it. That's all this girl thinks about for 300 years. She's never once like curious about anything outside of what she knows and people that are different than what she's been around for literally 300 years. The more I thought about it, it really bothered me because there were so many missed opportunities to really, in my opinion, fully live a life on this planet. And instead we spend, I don't know how long this book was, like almost 500 pages, hearing about her just thinking about herself and how lonely she is and how sad she is. She's gonna steal stuff so she can have a new like change of clothes, and like on and on and on. I don't know, the writing was pretty, but again, with like the length of the book, it got very redundant. There's a character who we meet who has a different deal with the devil, and they don't really get rounded out at all. They're supposed to be part of this big emotional moment in the book, and it just wasn't emotional because they were just flat. They were just there for one purpose, and I didn't really care. Like when I was swept up in it, I was enjoying it because it was different than anything I'd read before. But then like once I had some space from it, I was like, wait a minute. We didn't, what? Like what? I only get to live for like maybe 80 years, and I want to go to more places than just Europe and the United States, and I'm going to think about more people than just myself. I don't think I would recommend it. Yeah, please don't come for me. Next, this is one that I have heard about probably again since it came out because it's been hyped up for a while, and it's now a series, and one of the most recent book just came out this year. And I, at first when I heard about it, was like, oh my gosh, I have to read that book. And then I was like, you know what, it sounds kind of dumb. I don't think that's for me. I'm glad I didn't pick it up. And then it got to the point where I was like, well, now I'm just curious. That is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. You follow Farah, who is a human, and she accidentally kills a fairy who, they're kind of like the immortal people in this universe. And like 400 years ago, there was this huge war between fairies and humans. And at this point in time, humans think all fairies are evil. They're only out to trick you and kill you. And there is a literal wall dividing the land to where mortals live and where the fairies live. And you, as a human, would never, ever, ever cross the wall to go to the fairies' land because you would be killed pretty much immediately. We spend a lot of time with these fairies and like the politics of their world. It's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like it takes a lot of elements from Beauty and the Beast to inspire kind of some turning points in this story. And I would say overall, I actually enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.25 star rating, and it's kind of lower just because there were parts where it was a little bit slow. I have heard that the books after this in the series really pick up, and it's almost like the first book just had to lay the groundwork for the following books so we could get to more of the action. Is it a like fantastic work of literature? No. I will say that I am perplexed that the first book is in the young adult section of the library because it definitely has some adult themes. I already started the second book because I just really wanted to know what happens next. So that's usually a good sign. If I'm kind of skipping over other books, I should be reading next to get to this one. So yeah, I have drunk the Kool-Aid and here I go. Okay, next I have a thriller, and this is another one that I've seen on social media. It's The Push by Ashley Audrain. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is one, I think I finished it within 24 hours. This is a thriller that is in the theme of like evil children, which I am drawn to. The premise of this one is that there is this young couple. Blythe is the wife and Fox is the husband. They get married fairly young, and their first child they have together is a girl, and Blythe does not really feel like a motherly bond with her. she just is kind of like tired and stressed and doesn't feel that like overwhelming, like, oh, it's hard work, but it's so worth it. Like she hears so many other moms say that and she's like, yeah, like it is. Oh no, like what have I gotten myself into? And then like as the girl like goes into like being a toddler and being a little bit older, it really seems like the daughter, whose name is Violet, Violet does not seem to like Blythe, the mom. And Blythe is like really convinced that the daughter just dislikes her and something's wrong with her or with Violet, and no one else really sees it or believes her. They just say, oh, you just need to spend more time with her. Oh, you need to bond with her and do this. And she just never really gets there. And she gets pregnant again and has a son named Sam, and she feels what she thought she would feel that first time she had a baby. She's just in love with him, feels so connected, like thinks about him constantly. He's just her pride and joy. She finally feels like the way she thought she would feel as a mom, the way she wanted to feel. Things get weird with the kids, and oh, you really start to wonder if Violet is like low-key evil, like disturbed, like you're really not sure. And then as we go through the book, we also have flashbacks to when Blythe was a child, and we learn that her mother was pretty mentally ill when she had Blythe, and you kind of go through some of the like childhood trauma that Blythe went through. Then you also learn that Blythe's mother, her mother, so Blythe's grandma, was really mentally ill, and this was in like the 50s, and horrible things happen, and there's just a lot of like legacy of trauma and mental illness, depression. By the very end of the book, I feel like you could argue it a few different ways of like what actually happens in the end. Because you're kind of left asking yourself like, okay, number one, is Violet evil? Do we believe that this child is actually malicious and hates her mom and is trying to hurt the mom and is trying to hurt other people? Do we believe that, yes or no? Two, do we think maybe that Blythe is just crazy? Is she just like kind of out of her mind and she can only see the negative parts of this daughter that she doesn't feel connected with, and she's just actually kind of like losing it? And then next question is this line of women just, are they just kind of like cursed to just be sad and not great moms and horrible to their daughters? And is that kind of what's going on with Violet? Is she also experiencing some of that illness, and what is she going to turn into? I think if you are a mother, like even of adult children, this book might be very difficult for you to read because it goes over topics and events that are just upsetting, even for someone who does not have children. I thought the author did a really good job of creating that doubt, like the questions I talked about considering at the end of the book. They really did a good job of setting it up so that you really aren't for sure how things actually happened. You're only hearing them from the point of view of Blythe, and that of course skews it a little bit, where you don't know if she's crazy, if the daughter's crazy, are they all crazy? Is it just like a fever dream? You don't know. I love a thriller that just scoops me up and doesn't put me down, and I'm in its clutches whether I like it or not. So it was a fun read. Next we have an audiobook that I listened to, and it is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I gave this 3.75 stars. So in this book we're following Frances, and it takes place in the UK. She's basically a senior in high school, and she's all wrapped up in getting ready for exams and getting ready to apply to university. She is the head girl at her school, so she is known as just being very smart and studying all the time. And then we get to see what she's like in her private life, and she's obsessed with this podcast called Radio Silence, and it's about this kind of alternate universe, and there's an anonymous narrator who is living in this place called Universe City, like university. Frances loves to do artwork for the podcast, and she has kind of an alternate persona on Twitter where she posts the artwork, and she gets asked to do the artwork for the podcast, and then she finds out kind of by accident who the creator of the podcast is and befriends them. And then we spend the rest of the book with these two, and you get to see their friendship blossom. You get to see how they're treated differently by like their families and their other friends. There's a lot of kind of discovering more about yourself as you grow up, and you're going to go through these big transitions in life from being a child to going to university and then kind of being propelled into adult life. Like, it was well done. I wish I had read it as a teenager because it would have had way more punch for me if I was at that age. It was far enough away that I was able to recognize that the way the story is written is very true to life and very true to how I think many teenagers feel at that age. So I would totally recommend this to younger readers. High schoolers, maybe even some college kids might still like it because you're not as far from that age. It's rare, I think, to see a book that's about young adults or teenagers where an adult is writing it and it seems so realistic to what it's actually like to be someone who's at that age and going through all of the turmoil of being a teenager and just trying to get through life and figuring out like who you are as an independent person. Okay, next I have another thriller, and this was another good one where I was just glued to it, could not put it down. And that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I believe I gave this one a 3.75 stars as well. This book takes place over the course of one night, and we are mostly with Darby, who is a college art student, and she is leaving like on winter break, I believe, from her college in Boulder, Colorado, and she is driving to Utah because her mother has very suddenly been diagnosed with cancer and is undergoing surgery, and so she's trying to get there as quickly as she can, but she's also trying to race this snowstorm that's coming in. She has to pull over at this rest stop, and there are 4 other people at the rest stop. Like, her phone's at like 20% battery. She's all worried about her mom. There's a weather radio in the rest stop that says the plows aren't gonna be out for another 8 hours, so not till morning. And she's stuck in this rest stop with these strangers. So she goes outside to try to get a signal on her phone, and when she's walking back through the parking lot, there's a big white like work van, and she sees movement. So she like peeks through the back window, and she sees a little girl in like a dog kennel, like a big like cage. So then we spend the rest of the book with Darby trying to figure out whose car it is, what is going on, and it just gets nuts. There are so many twists in this story that it really reminded me of The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson in regards to the twists, where like you think you've like gotten to the twist and you're like, okay, I kind of know what's going on now. And then there's another, but they're not so crazy that it doesn't make sense. And there's no way you could possibly guess all the twists. I kind of guessed one of them early on, but there were still so many other ones that I was just like, whoa, whoa, and whoa. Again, not a work of like literature, but still very enjoyable. There was a little bit of repetitiveness with describing certain characters, like where you're talking about how someone's teeth are yellow, but every time we see the character, it's yellow teeth, yellow teeth, yellow teeth. They were there with their yellow teeth, and it's like, okay, I got it. I can imagine the yellow teeth without you having to tell me every single time. The repetitiveness did not detract from the thrill. And then the last book received a perfect 5-star rating, which is rare around these parts because I'm fairly picky when it comes to my ratings. I hope to see it become a classic in its field, and that is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And this book is, one, a quick read. It's told almost in like little vignettes where each little like story or chapter, vignette, whatever, is told in a different style of writing. So there's like choose your own adventure. There is like prose, there's poetry. They go through all different sorts of like literary elements or like writing elements, I guess. You can tell it's been a long time since I've been in an English class. So it is, the author is writing about an abusive relationship that she was in when she was younger. And I would say the main focus of this book is to shed some light on how little we talk about domestic violence in homosexual relationships. And she talks about the way the perception of these women needs to be skewed in a way that is palatable for the public. Like I know she gives an example where one is a white woman and one is a black woman. And in that particular instance, it is the black woman who is committing the violence. And so like the lawyers in the court think that it shouldn't be that hard to get a conviction because it's a black woman committing crime against a white woman, even though there have been instances where it's the reverse or it's two people of color committing violence. And it is just so well done. I even wrote down a quote from it. So this is from the hardback edition, page 138. She says, "But the nature of archival silence is that certain people's narratives and their nuances are swallowed by history. We see only what pokes through because it is sufficiently salacious for the majority to pay attention." And yeah, I'm kind of speechless from this book because it was just so incredible. And I need to read more about topics like this because I kind of stray away from nonfiction most of the time because it's a little bit harder for me to get into. Yeah, I guess I don't know if I can properly sum it up more than that, other than to say that I think it should be necessary reading for most people. I would say if you've been in an abusive relationship, maybe look up some trigger warnings because there is violence, of course, discussed because it's about a violent relationship. I feel like I could totally see it being something you'd have to read in like a feminism course or like a gender studies course. Yes, highly, highly recommend. And I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it because I had heard a lot about it and didn't really understand what it was about. I thought it was like a creepy thriller at first when I saw the cover. Okay, and that is it. Those are the 6 books I read in October. I didn't do as much like spooky fall reading as I thought I would do. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below if you have read any of these books that I mentioned. If you have any other thoughts, if you disagree with me, let's chat, and let me know what you plan on reading in November. Thanks, bye.